Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we are bringing you a first look at Tier VIII Premium British cruiser Belfast 43. Raptor, what are you talking about? Don't we already have an HMS Belfast in game? Isn't she even on the naughty list? Yeah, she is on the naughty list. But Wargaming is trying something not new, I suppose. They've kind of tried this with West Virginia 44. But they are trying to bring Belfast back into the game in some form. And I'm overjoyed to see this, because Belfast is one of the most iconic museum ships in the world. I mean, she's right there in bloody downtown London on the Thames. She's one of the best kept museum ships I've ever seen. She's gorgeous, she's prominent, and the fact that she's not available in World of Warships is a damn crime. It's an absolute tragedy. They tried about a year and a half ago to start looking at ways they could potentially change or nerf or tweak premium ships to start, that way they could, okay, let's make some changes, then we can bring them back for sale. And the community lost their minds. Under no circumstances did they want this. So kind of Wargaming now is trying something different. They're trying to basically bring Belfast back in a different version. But what does that mean? All right, so history lesson time. Sit back for a sec. HMS Belfast was commissioned into the Royal Navy on 5 August 1939, just a few weeks before the United Kingdom declared war against Germany. Not horribly long after that, on 21 November 1939, she struck a mine while exiting the Firth of Forth that effectively broke her keel and made her one of the most easily referenced modern examples of what explosive shockwaves transmitted through water can really do to a warship. As someone who worked damage control in the engineering phase of designing warships, we take shock damage very seriously, and this is one of the reasons why, okay? Belfast subsequently spent almost 3 years in dry dock undergoing repairs, and when she exited the yard in November of 1942, this right here is what she looked like. Now, the Tier VII HMS Belfast we already have in-game represents her second major refit. But that didn't occur until the spring of 1945, when the Royal Navy was preparing her for a Far East deployment that came basically right before the Japanese surrendered. She never actually saw action in the Pacific. So, Belfast 43 here clocks in as the 24th Tier 8 cruiser in World of Warships, and fully half of those are light cruisers, or in the case of Mogami, available in a light cruiser configuration of some kind. She has some pretty stiff competition. So how does she measure up, especially when you compare her to the Tier 7 version of this ship and her sister ship in the tech tree, HMS Edinburgh? What the hell is different? Well, let's dig around under the hood and figure it out. First things first, survivability, 38,400 hit points. As light cruisers go in this tier, that's pretty good. She's square in the middle of the pack, nice and easy, right? Mines tops the category at like 42,000 and change. Not surprising that she's built on a heavy cruiser hull, while Bayard lags the pack down with about just a touch under 35,000. So she's kind of in the middle, which is nice. You're not really hurting for hit points here. Her armor scheme is literally identical to that of Edinburgh in the tech tree, right? So if you wonder what the armor scheme on this ship is like, go pull up Edinburgh on your tech tree in the armor viewer and have at, and you can see all the armor scheme here on Belfast 43 that you want. Same armor scheme. Maneuverability and concealment, as you would expect. Her speed and handling, basically are identical actually to Edinburgh. 32.5 knot top speed, 680 meter turning circle. Belfast 43 is a touch slower on the rudder, literally like 0.3 of a second. That's not enough that you're going to notice. The ship's going to handle like an Edinburgh. All right, if you've driven an Edinburgh in game, you know what you're getting. That's how the ship's going to handle. Concealment-wise, this is interesting. She actually retains the stealthier profile detection numbers of her Tier 7 twin. In other words, a full stealth rig Belfast 43 you see here gets down to 8.9 kilometers detection. That's actually better than Edinburgh in the tech tree. It's actually good enough for best in tier. She edges out Russian premium light cruiser Ochakov just barely. Okay, so that's pretty noteworthy. She's going to need this stealth, and you'll see why in a little bit. Okay, main battery. Nothing really new here. If you've played an existing Tier 7 Belfast, then you know these guns. The ballistics, range, and dispersion of these guns are identical to those of the Belfast we already have in-game. Belfast 43, though, has a longer reload. You see there, 9 seconds. That's compared to 7.5 seconds for the late war refit version of Belfast that's down at Tier 7. She retains access to HE shells, you see there. But what's different is that these HE shells have a higher alpha damage. That 2450 value you see, the Tier 7 Belfast, those shells are 2100. This is really a reflection of the fact that as you move up in tiers, the shell damage kind of needs to adapt, right? That 3100 value you see on the AP shell damage, that matches Edinburgh, but these are not the same shells that Edinburgh fires. Remember, the Tech Tree British cruisers get better penetration angles and fuse timers on their AP shells. Ships like Belfast here, and you see it at Tier 7 as well, that have access to both HE and AP. The AP shells in the British light cruiser line do not get that fancy version of the AP shell. They get like a traditional, regular old AP shell, fuse timer, normalization angles, all that stuff, okay? So these are, basically, if you've played an existing Belfast, these are the same guns, essentially. Just you have a longer reload, okay? Why do they have a longer reload? Well, partly, I think, because this version of Belfast has torpedoes, okay? This torpedo configuration matches that exactly of Edinburgh. You see here one triple tube launcher on each side of the ship. And these torpedoes, you see there, the Mark 9s are identical to the stock torpedoes you find on Edinburgh. They are 8 kilometer in range with about an alpha strike of a little less than 16,000. So they hit decently. She just doesn't have, only a triple per side. She doesn't have a lot of them. So you got to keep that in mind, right? Like Fiji down at Tier 7 in the tech tree has a pair of quad launchers. That always feels nice. Edinburgh, I always forget she only has 3. So grumble, grumble, grumble. But there they are, okay? AA defense is one place where you'll see some serious and notable differences between each of these ships, okay? Most of the differences you're going to find between Tier 7 Belfast, Edinburgh, and Belfast 43 are going to be found in their respective anti-aircraft suites. The Tier 7 version of Belfast, as noted earlier, represents this ship as it was heading into action against Japan in an era of frequent kamikaze attacks, so her AA suite has been buffed accordingly. Similarly, Edinburgh's represents what her AA suite might have looked like later in the war by equipping her with 40mm Bofors for her mid-range aura instead of the 40mm pom-pom. Belfast 43 has an AA suite that is typical, if uninspiring, for mid-war British cruisers. It's very similar to that of Tier 7 tech tree ship Fiji. We were just talking about Fiji. If I'm really honest here, it's basically the same, okay? For a ship that will see Tier 10 carriers, this is very, very much a weakness. Her long-range aura is okay. She puts up a decent, amount of flak. 4 puffs is okay. That damage is a little low. The flak damage here is a little on the low side for the tier. Most notably, though, you have 2 things you got to look at here. That mid-range aura doesn't start until 2.5 kilometers. That's a full kilometer and smaller than most Tier 8 ships have a mid-range aura, and it's only 80 DPS. That's terrible. That's terrible. You go look at a ship like a Cleveland, even a ship like an Edinburgh, that's got the 40mm Bofors in this tier, in this mid-range aura, and yeah, they've got a lot of mid-range punch. Belfast doesn't have that. Belfast 43, here, doesn't have that. It's all in the inner ring. So why does this matter, Raptor? Why does this matter? Well, it matters because the lack of A defenses becomes a much bigger deal when you look over her consumables list. Now, there's a lot to like here. I'm not going to lie. She gets access to hydro. Okay, standard Tier 8 hydro, 5 kilometer range. She gets a short duration smoke. This is exactly the same smoke that the British destroyers get. That's really nice. So this is not the long duration smoke you get out of the tech tree line or even out of Tier 7 Premium Belfast, right? This is different. This is like the destroyer smoke, so keep that in mind. And she gets a choice between surveillance radar and catapult fighter because this version of Belfast still has retained her aircraft facilities, same way as Edinburgh does over in the tech tree. Edinburgh can also take radar or fighter here as well. Okay, the fighter may actually sound tempting given how abysmal her AA is, but the play here is really about her surveillance radar. That smoke radar combo that makes her twin down at Tier 7 so disgusting is why you play the ship, right? Now, what's missing, if you look at this list, what's really missing here and what's going to drive all but the most experienced cruiser captains crazy when playing this ship is that she has no heel, okay? So consider, this is a ship that's going to see Tier 10 aircraft carriers, Tier 10 battleships. Yes, she has very, very good detection. Yes, if you have radar charges left, you can counter detect destroyers that are spotting you. But if you're spotted by planes and the battleships, Thunderers and Yamatos are throwing shells at you and everything, this can get dirty in a hurry. Okay. The other thing to consider is that right now you're seeing 3 charges of each consumable. That's because I've grabbed my Belfast captain and pulled him down here. He has superintendent. The base charge of each of these is 2 consumables, 2 each, 2 puffs of smoke, 2 radars, 2 hydros. Ouch. I love playing Radar Edinburgh, right, at this tier. But the main difference here, and this is, we're talking about the radar, let's make sure we point this out, okay? Radar Edinburgh has a 9.2 surface detection, but a 10-kilometer radar that lasts 30 seconds. Belfast 43 here has an 8.9-kilometer surface detection with a 9-kilometer radar that lasts 25 seconds. This is effectively the tier, I think this is like the Tier VII radar, more or less, that you get, that you can get on some ships in the tier. It's a shorter range and shorter duration. That lack of a heal, though, man, I don't know. So, I mean, kind of overall, there's a lot to like here, right? I mean, for starters, I'm just stoked that Belfast is coming back to the game in some form at all. The fact that one of the most iconic and visible and most visited museum ships in the world isn't represented in World of Warships has been a tragedy for years. And Wargaming's trying to correct that. So kudos to them. Is this ship going to be worth it? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what changes she undergoes through testing. And there will be some, right? The version that I'm talking you through now will not be the version that releases the game. Something will change. I don't know what, but something will. We'll just have to see. The smoke and radar thing, I really like. I like that. It's fun to play that way at Belfast at Tier 7. It's a little gross, if I'm honest, okay? It's one of the reasons the ship is kind of busted. But the reality is that by changing it to the shorter duration smoke and reducing the range and duration of the radar here for the tier, it differentiates her from Edinburgh even further in the tech tree, which I like. And the short duration smoke means that she can stop briefly, hunt destroyers without getting molested, hopefully, and then she has to move and get out of there. Otherwise, some battleship's going to end her game. So I like the idea of where they're going. The execution, I feel, is going to be trouble. And the other problem is, this is not going to be this is not going to be a newbie-friendly cruiser ship. Like, cruisers are already very challenging to play at high tier. This ship is gonna make it even harder, right? It's gonna be tough. So, anyway, guys, there you go. Hope you enjoyed that quick first look at Belfast 43. Wash your hands, be safe out there, and I'll catch you next time.